Gaurav, thank you very much for being here. It's a pleasure having you here. Let's start by understanding your responsibility with Ernest Young in India. Can you give us a bit more details, please?
Sure. So my name is Gaurav Karnik. I lead the real estate practice for EY India. EY India is the largest professional services firm in India, and we dominate the market by a fair amount. We've done a lot of work in the real estate space. We were actually the first firm to start off with a real estate practice, and we have continued to build that since 2005. And we continue to invest in the sector and to be with various clients.
Perfect. Uh, a lot has been said about how India is booming, how India is interesting when it comes to real estate. What's your vision about the market? Is the market as hot or as interesting as I hear from developers and investors active here?
So definitely, real estate market over the last 5 to 10 years has really developed, has become more mature. There are a number of regulations which have helped to make this a modern competitive market. We have the real estate investment trust regime, which actually gives an exit to a number of investors. Earlier, when investors were getting into India, there was no exit. It was like, where do you exit? Who do you sell to? But now we have a public listed vehicle into which you can exit. Then we have the Real Estate Regulation Act, which gives a lot of comfort to buyers that developers will complete projects, and that has clearly given a big confidence booster to everyone who's investing in this market or buying in the market. And you can see the residential prices are really growing fast because people believe in the developers. They believe that they will complete the projects, and they're feeling safe on it. There are other regulations that are to do with the IBC, the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, which also gives lenders faith to be able to give loans to developers. They know there's a backstop, and they know that they'll be protected, and they'll be able to enforce their debts. We also have the GST, which has made life much easier on the indirect tax side. So given all these changes on the regulatory side, real estate market has really developed into a mature market, and we've seen a number of investors come in. We also have the AIFs, or the alternate investment funds, which have also been deploying a large amount of domestic money in real estate, and they have also been very successful. So I think to the point is that I think real estate is growing well. I think the future is pretty bright, and I think there will be more investment and more growth in this market.
When it comes to international investors trying to deploy some capital here in the region, what are the main obstacles or what are the challenges they should be aware of to avoid making mistakes that usually you saw in the past?
Yeah. So I think the first thing is that when you choose a partner in India, you got to diligence the partner well. You have to be clear on what type of projects you're getting into, what is the landscape, what is the market, what is the type of asset class you're getting into. So there are asset classes in which there are a lot more risks. In some asset classes, there are less risk. So foreign investors typically would love to get into income-yielding assets and not get into the development stage, which is more riskier as more approval processes around it. So depending on the maturity of the investor, or how much experience he has with developing markets, emerging markets, he needs to decide what stage of development does he want to get into this market when he invests, and that will really determine his returns, his risk, etc.
And do you see any specific asset class being more of a desire for international investors? You said assets that will produce income, which would probably mean offices, retail, industrial.
Yeah, so I think you're absolutely right, Gustavo. One of the more important assets lately has been warehousing or industrial. We're seeing a lot of foreign investment in that, or creation of platforms to invest in industrial platforms or industrial warehousing platforms. Along with that, they're also looking to invest in things like data centers, which are the two emerging asset classes that we see. Office is clearly still always been a favorite of foreign investors because in India, like the rest of the world, the return to work has been much more pronounced. And there are a lot more people going back to work, and a lot of companies, people are encouraging people to come back to work, and I think people are wanting to go back to work. So clearly the office space in India is in contradiction to the rest of the world, where I think there are a lot more occupancy, a lot more regulations which are improving the commercial office space. In fact, now even special economic zones, for example, you can denotify particular floors, and that has been a big booster as well to improve, get more tenants into India. We also see from a tenant base, global capability centers come into India in a large way. And in the next 3-4 years, we will see a number of companies set up their global capability centers in India. And that will also boost the commercial office space. So I think clearly commercial office, warehousing, data centers will be where the investments will come in.
You mentioned a series of changes in the market in such a short period of time that made much easier for foreign investors to come and invest in India. At the same time, when I look around and I ask our members and some local members in India as well. There are not a huge number of international investors, new international investors coming to India at the moment. Of course, the usual suspects, the GIC, Brookfield, Blackstone, they're not international anymore. They're very local. They have been here, successful, doing very well, and they have been committing more and more capital to deploy in India. But am I right to say that we don't see yet a large amount of international investors coming to India at this stage? Or do you see more and more coming?
So I think a large number of investors are coming through fund of funds. So their exposure to India is maybe through some of the funds floated by the current international investment managers who have floated India real estate funds. What I think will happen in the future, and we hope it happens, is these funds start to take direct exposure in Indian real estate assets as we move along,
Seeking higher returns.
and that will give them higher returns. And also, I think they have got the experience of Indian assets through the funds they invest, and coming in directly will definitely be a more lucrative opportunity for most of them. So I would hope that a number of the foreign investors who are not get directly into India really take a direct equity or debt exposure into India directly going forward.
If I may, my impression is that at the moment the international scenario with the tensions in with Russia, China, and other markets are putting the investors on a hold position, especially those that can deploy capital in the US with so much distressed assets in Europe. But once the interests start going down, the interest rates, probably they will have to seek higher returns. And I like to think India will be the first one on the list, because if China is out of context, everybody I speak to, they're not touching China. Russia, don't need to mention. Brazil is complicated. And when you see India and the numbers and the change and the new elections that just took place, I believe that I share the same feelings that in the next few months we will see already a change of this scenario. And do you believe that there are enough good projects here for the international players, and not only projects, but do you see the local players ready to engage with international players to receive this capital? Do they have the level of due diligence? Can they satisfy international organizations in terms of the needs they have to deploy capital?
So two things, you're absolutely right. One, that if the interest rates soften in the US or in Western in Western markets, clearly there'll be a lot more allocation available for investment in emerging markets. And if we look at emerging markets, clearly India is in a very good spot. It's got a very strong economy. It's been showing growth rates in excess of 6% for the last 10 years. It has a very stable democracy, a great judicial system. It has a lot of positives which will give a lot of faith to foreign investors going forward. And once they have allocations available to them, then the most competitive opportunity outside the developed markets would be India. And clearly that's shown by the geopolitical uncertainties which are there. Different countries have different issues which are there. So I think clearly there is an opportunity for India to be the place where a lot of investments will come in. If you talk about developers, clearly the developers have also modernized over the years. They have become more professional, and they clearly can receive foreign capital. And I'm sure foreign investors will have the confidence to invest with Indian developers because they have a track record, they have good assets, they've been able to deliver the projects over the last so many years. And I'm sure that Indian developers will be happy to partner with foreign capital, given that some of the expertise that foreign capital will also bring along with it, because the experience they have in other markets, that's something they could also provide to the developer as a partner.
Gaurav, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.